So we get a lot of feedback. This is the closed loop action that we talked about last week. You want to do something and your cerebellum is saying, that's it, good, yeah, that's right, perfect, well done, oh, good feedback, you got it. When we do as a small task, we may or may not really use the vestibular, visual, auditory feedback loops. We may just be using tactile feedback loops. We might be using visual as well. If you're doing a bigger body motion, then vestibular may have come in as well, and maybe auditory stimulus is feeding into this as well. So it is very much about error control, managing so that you get to do what you wanted to do with no errors in the implementation of it. Here's when things go wrong with the cerebellum. These are the kinds of things that you'll see. I talked about motor tone and hypotonia. So this is a presentation of injury or damage in the cerebellum. So we can see the presentation of hypotonia with that kind of injury. So we see overall just kind of low tone in muscles. Asthenia is this is a low tone. Asthenia is a presentation of generalized, not tone, but strength, making a differentiation between those two. Tone is what a muscle feels like. High tone is spastic. Flaccid is the very essentially no tone. This is about, asthenia is about strength. So that means that it isn't about a low tone, it's about weakness. So the cerebellum damage can cause simple full body weakness. Dysmetria is a deficit of getting your whatever body part you're using to get to where you intended it to go. So dysmetria would me reaching out to grab this container of strawberries that have already been eaten, so what's the point? Why would I want to eat this? So with dysmetria, so I would reach out and pick it up if that was everything I wanted to do. And with dysmetria, what you're getting is, oh, the cerebellum should tell me, I'm almost there, yep, that's about right, yep, that, perfect, well done. When it doesn't tell me that, I don't know when to stop my reach. I may stop it too soon and not reach what I'm looking for. I might miss it to the side, I might overshoot it. Yeah?
Is that one of those push my nose?
Yes, absolutely. This kind of thing? Absolutely. Your cerebellum gets really messed up when you're drinking alcohol, which means this doesn't work so well, and that's why they use it as a test. So your cerebellum gets quite involved with alcohol. Dysdiadochokinesis. This is one of those cocktail party words. Dysdiadochokinesis is whether you can coordinate bilateral in your body an action that you intended to do. So it could be something like it's a relatively quick motion where you have to turn your palms all the way up and all the way down, repeatedly in a rhythm. If you have a problem with your cerebellum on one side, this hand may be doing this, and this hand may be doing, because it doesn't know what it's doing. The cerebellum isn't telling it what to do. that is a terrific example of that coordination and crossover. Yeah. So we can do tapping. We can do these kinds of things. Those are ways to test for the cerebellum. Cerebellum presents with a tremor, and this tremor is an involuntary tremor that gets worse when you're trying to do something. So when I want to pick this up and I am sitting here resting and everything is fine, but as soon as I start to go to get this, and the closer I get to it, the worse the tremor gets.
So you wouldn't want to thread a needle like that?
No. You would have a very difficult time threading a needle if you had this kind of intention tremor. The more intent you are on something, the worse your tremor is. You can also see with the cerebellum some postural tremors. So you can see head tremors or simple essential tremors of the head, but you can also see truncal tremors, all kinds of things like that. You can see gait disturbance in an ataxic gait, which you guys have all seen me do already.
Can you do it again?
No.
I'm done. For the online.
But the ataxic.
Come on, Margaret.
There's ataxic gait, but there's also body ataxia. So what I was showing you before when we were talking about tone and dystonia and an athetoid presentation, athetoid's kind of smooth and not jerky so much, but it's really hard to coordinate, where ataxia's more like that. Sharp, brisk, real quick alterations of motor tone.
You guys ever play charades between the teachers and just like,
That's how we're going to test you. That's how we're going to test you this year. All right, basal ganglia problems. So basal ganglia is working really hard on you maintaining postural control. It also influences tone substantially. So initiation of gross motor, planning can be impaired if there's something wrong with the basal ganglia. So the execution of what you intend to do is impaired. So normally we would have good postural adjustments. If somebody came by and startled you and you were just in the middle of a step and you felt like you were falling to the side, you just catch yourself. This means your basal ganglia is working for you. If it's not working for you, somebody could startle you, you would freeze and just fall over because the basal ganglia isn't saying, you know, you ought to get the rest of those muscles catching you here because you're about to fall down. You don't get that response that you
So it's like those painting goats?
No, no. Think of it as not a lack of response, but the response is slowed.
Okay.
It's not automatic. All right. So we see also with the basal ganglia working, we see this normal motor tone maintenance going on as well. And that is, I put this picture in only for you to think about. Look at all the discussion that's happening in here. This is like on fire all the time, and except when you're sleeping. It's all of these components of the basal ganglia, the midbrain, all of those, and then looping up into the cortex. looping down to the substantia nigra. All of that discussion allows us to have fluid motor actions. When we don't have it, then we have a lot of motor problems. So here we go. We show up with bradykinesia, slow movements. This is our typical Parkinson's patient who just doesn't get a lot of motion going. Really slow movements, yeah.
Is there supposed to be another handout for this?
Did we run out?
Yeah,
Oh.
like an hour ago.
Oh, good, okay. There is one on the, in the
Online.
Canvas class,
Oh.
yeah. Yeah, but everything's, keep taking notes. Rigidity happens when you have a problem with the basal ganglia. We've already talked about those. The tremor in basal ganglia damage is not an intention tremor, it's an involuntary tremor. So when the person is just relaxed, you'll see these little tremors. When they're not doing anything, you might see their head move, you might see their hands, you might see their leg move. When they get up to do something, the tremor goes away. So it is, so there's the difference between the cerebellum and the basal ganglia as far as what kind of tremor we're talking about. Akinesia is literally kind of setting in and freezing in position. This is late Parkinson's disease often, where it's, you know, it's all they can do to get any kind of motion happening at all. Chorea is a full body movement pattern that steps somewhere in between athetosis and ataxia. It's very synergistic in its patterns. It can be choppy and short and also big sways of motion. The kind of the poster child for that movement pattern is Huntington's disease, when that part of the brain is damaged that much. And then we've talked about athetosis. If we have a problem with the dorsal column, we don't get sensory input up that pathway, and so we may have problems with proprioception, problems with kinesthesia, knowing where you are in space, knowing how you're moving, which means that we could see gait problems and we could see dysmetria. And so this would not be basal ganglia, this would be a sensory pathway that's damaged. So this would be a spinal cord kind of injury. And then we see some changes just because people are older. Overall, their strength is not as good as it was at some point in time. And lots of reasons for that I know that Brenda will probably be talking about in 225 as you're working on strength activities and things like that. Just overall, the diminution of having enough connections and the quality of connections in the muscle. We get a slower reaction time. Pathways are a bit slower. So impulses don't go as quickly as they used to. We may not have as much cognitive control over it or sensory input. Overall loss of flexibility over time, which then would lead into some faulty posture, which impairs balance. And so all of these pieces of age changes are things that we'll see in our patients.